A leading woman for me is someone who is selfless, but also doesn't forget to love herself. That's a leading woman for me.
Xyza Cruz Bacani. Hi and welcome to Leading Women.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Kumusta? How has this year been for you?
Well, we're under a pandemic, all of us, and this year has been really busy for me for work. So I'm currently having a short holiday with with a close friend.
Okay, taking a rest from being a very busy, award-winning, recognized street documentary photographer in Hong Kong. Pero
Mm.
bago ka naging isang street documentary photographer, you became or you were a migrant worker. Is that the proper term, Saisa, or domestic helper, overseas Filipino worker? Tulungan mo kaming maintindihan at maisapuso, so to speak, kung ano ang tamang term na gamitin.
So I became a domestic worker in Hong Kong for almost a decade, and well, the proper term, the one that I'm campaigning whenever I have the opportunity or the platform, is for us to change the term that we use when we call domestic workers, like, because you know what, why don't we call them house managers? Because they're managing our homes, and it's difficult to manage a stranger's home. Hindi nga namin bahay yung inaasikaso, di ba? Bahay ng iba. And it takes a lot of IQ and EQ to be able to do that. So one of the reasons why I'm campaigning for changing or the way we call domestic workers or helpers, I don't really like that term, is because when you call them helpers, it kind of takes away the dignity to their job, na parang, oh, helper, kahit hindi sweldohan ng tama. Meanwhile, when you call them workers, you know that they're doing a job and they deserve a good salary. It's just like words are very powerful. And when we change the way we use those words, we kind of empower them as well. So that's why I'm campaigning for that. And thank you for giving me a platform to talk about that. Yeah.
Well, thank you also for helping us respect, understand, and admire house managers just like you, Saisa, no? Again, going back to how you started working in Hong Kong, kumusta yung journey na yon? At saka, what was your reason for leaving the country?
I was 19 when I left the Philippines. I was on my formative stage. So I was studying nursing that time, but because we are poor, I'm the eldest of the family. And the typical story that the eldest is supposed to help the family when we cannot support, my mother cannot support all of us anymore. So she asked me, she didn't force me, she asked me nicely, like, my employer is looking for another domestic worker. Do you want to come over? And because I'm young and I'm adventurous, I was like, sure. So I was super excited when I left. So it's not the typical story na, di ba, ang lungkot-lungkot pag umaalis. But with me, I was young, I was adventurous. I thought this is an opportunity. It was an opportunity. And until now, I'm very grateful for that chapter of my life because it has taught me so much. The way I act, the way I treat people, the way I work, my work ethics are still very much related to my work ethics when I was working as a domestic worker.
Yung bonding moments ninyo ng mommy mo, you were there, you were with her. What challenges did you encounter and how did you resolve it as a mother-daughter team?
For the first few years, I don't really know her, and she doesn't really know me too, because I was already a teenager, a full-grown teenager during the time. So we don't have a bonding. The bond was cut off when I was 8. So it was difficult, especially we're working together. She's also like my boss, my other boss. By the way, this is super, but I talk about that experience, the story of my mom, with my book, We Are Like Air. It's a very thick book about the story of my mother because I always talk about my experience, but I never really talk about her experience. So it was a perspective of a mother and a child that was left behind. So yeah, that's my book, We Are Like Air.
Why are we like air?
So, when I got discovered with photography now by Rico Comora, I transitioned to documentary photography. I started photographing migrant workers in different parts of the world. I went to Abu Dhabi, I went to Dubai, to the US, different parts of the world. But then I never really talk about my family's experience. And we are a family of migrants. My father was a former worker in Saudi. My mom works in Hong Kong. So it's like a family of migrants. And I never really talk about our experience. But then I realized that why not? It was 8 chapters of different stories of mothers and children being left behind and employers as well. It's more like to know the nuances or to show the nuances of migration that, women who leave are not victims, are not just victims. We also need to see them as champions. They are the axis of two countries, the one that they left and the one that they're now serving, two families. So I feel like the book itself, We Are Like Air, is a celebration of the sacrifices. We are like air because I strongly believe that migrants are just like air, important, a necessity, but unseen, just like air, just like oxygen. We need oxygen, we need air, but we don't see it. And it's similar with migrants. Yeah.
Coming up, Xyza tells us how she started a career that would move and inspire Filipino migrant workers such as herself. Award-winning photographer Xyza Bacani shares with us how she continues to capture not just images, but stories of working Filipinos across the globe.
Your book, We Are Like Air. Migrant workers should be recognized, or an inspiration should be respected, pero unseen sila like air. But your photographs now are seen. Yung nakaka-touch sila, people can relate, and people can understand the stories of these migrant workers. How did you stumble upon photography while working as a migrant worker in Hong Kong?
My first dream is to become a painter. So I already known since I was young that I'm drawn with the art world, because, it's a funny story. We have a free library when I was young. We don't have a television, but we have a free library in our barangay, which people dump their books. So because we don't have a telly, as a child, I'm very curious. Doon ko inuubos yung oras ko. Nagbabasa ako, tinitignan ko yung mga pictures. I'm looking at artworks, and siguro I can say that museums, exhibitions are not part of my life growing up. But then with these old books that were thrown away, it kind of like made me imagine more, made me interested more with art. And then I was given the chance to finally get a camera in 2009 because my mother never goes out for holiday. So she never saw the beauty of Hong Kong. And as a daughter, no, okay yung relationship namin that time. I was like, why don't I show her how Hong Kong looks like? So I asked my Mrs. Louie if I can borrow money to buy a camera. So I bought a camera and then go out and then take photos and then show it to her. In some ways, I became her eye, and then parang na rin siyang namamasyal, di ba?
Ang saya kasi parang talagang maganda yung bonding nyo. At saka yung nakikita mo na hindi niya nakikita, na-appreciate niya.
She's my biggest critic. Sasabihin niya, ayoko yung pangit yan. Tapos tatanungin ko, bakit? Ang sasagot niya, basta pangit. Malay ko ba kung bakit pangit? And then, I realized na, my mom doesn't know anything about the technicalities of photography. But then, she is basically one of my audiences. So if my mom says na pangit, malamang pangit talaga, di ba? Kasi hindi naman niya naiintindihan yung technicalities ng photography.
Aminin natin, iba rin yung mata mo when you take photos, beautiful images. I stalked you on Instagram and saw the pictures. Ang gaganda. Kahit ngayong time of COVID, no, mararamdaman ng tumitingin yung nararamdaman ng photographer. COVID changed your perspective on taking photographs, and how do you feel about being on lockdown?
Medyo mas mahirap siya ngayon because I need to wear, a complete set of PPE as well when I go to a hospital and cover a certain story. Yun yung nabago talaga. But then when it comes to me interacting with people, I felt that I need to be more responsible. Hindi na gaya ng dati na, you can just talk to someone. It's more like I'm thinking about them more than I'm thinking about me because I don't want to be the one who's gonna cause them sickness or a disease. So I'm really more sensitive to that now than before. My goal during this year was to actually tell stories from outside Manila because sometimes we tend to focus more on cities, but may mga struggles yung mga towns eh. Struggles, and also there are wins. Like in our town, we were able to control it for 100+ days.
And these struggles that you would like to show all of us, not just the Philippines, but the entire world, no, brought about Project Ugnayan.
Project Ugnayan is spearheaded by the Ayala Corporation. So all these huge companies pulled together, they distributed vouchers to like ang daming families, and they want it to be documented because they want to raise awareness that this is the time to help each other. Because when people say we're in the same boat, that's not true. We're on the same ocean, but we're not on the same boat. Others are actually drowning. So this is the time to lend a hand or help our fellows.
What else do you hope to achieve, Xyza? Parang base sa kwento mo, you are fulfilled already. And so, like what you've shared, no, thankful and grateful. Ano pa ang hopes at dreams mo?
My hopes and dreams, to be honest, is for my family to break the cycle of migration. Sana more opportunities and more options for the younger ones. Even though there's good in migration, the bad in migration kind of like, alam mo, ang daming batang lumalaking walang magulang, and that affects how they grow and how they become adults in the future. So sana wala nang batang maiiwan. Yun yung hope ko.
Wow, Xyza, I found a friend in you. Maraming salamat.
Thank you.
And take care. Aabangan pa namin ang iyong mga photographs. And thank you again for helping understand the plight and the respect and inspiration that the migrant workers show, not only the Filipinos, but the entire world. Maraming salamat.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.